welcome to the panel today. Very happy to be here. Just a little bit about DAU-UP first of all, and the context behind why we're sitting here today. So DAU-UP has actually been specializing in fully managed services for mobile app user acquisition. 100% of our activity is games, and as a consequence of that, we deal with a lot of social casino activity, and we've seen the industry change very much over the years. So on a personal level, I'm very excited to have four of the leading heavyweights in the industry here on stage with me today to discuss a few of the challenges that we're facing and a few of the opportunities as well. So without further ado, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves.
Hi everyone. I'm Aayush Sakya, Director of User Acquisition at GSN Games. GSN Games is a developer with games such as GSN Casino, Bingo Bash, and Solitaire Tri-Peaks.
Hello, I'm Mark Beck. I'm formerly VP of Finance and User Acquisition at Product Madness. So our biggest title is Heart of Vegas, or Heart of Vegas.
I'm Carey, DiJulio, Vice President General Manager at Big Fish Games. Big Fish has 2 amazing offices in Seattle and Oakland, and 5 game studios where we produce content ranging from social casino, premium, casual, and mid-core, and as well as running a huge distribution and marketing and BI platform.
My name is Nick Talarico, founder and CEO of Super Lucky Casino. We're a mobile-only social casino developer with individual bingo, slots, video poker, blackjack, and solitaire games.
Okay, thanks guys. First of all, I think it's fair to say over the past few years, possibly when we've seen panels like this and we've been discussing the main user acquisition channels for social casino, especially for mobile apps, Facebook has always been traditionally at the top of the agenda. But I think from our perspective in DAU-UP, we're definitely seeing more and more activity shifting towards Google, and they definitely got their stuff together within the past few months. So I'm wondering if you can comment a little bit on how Google takes place in your user acquisition strategy today, and how you see it evolving as well. Aayush, I'll let you answer that first.
Thank you. Google has always had a tremendously large source of inventory, right? With AdMob, search, Google Display, which is their mobile website, as well as YouTube. And I think it's no secret that over the last 8 to 12 months, their mobile app inventory has been working really well for a lot of the social casino companies. I can't give specifics, but I think there's 2 things that Google did that has been spurring this trend. One is stability around tracking, and the second is conversion optimizer. Both of them have been working really well, and it's no secret that Google's becoming a larger source of inventory for us.
Anybody else?
I think Google also just provides a great set of tools and APIs, so if you're a more sophisticated advertiser, you can really tap into everything that they offer, and that's a deeper sort of level of integration that Facebook currently offers today.
Interesting. And is anybody willing to share in percentage terms how much Google is part of the strategy?
It's growing.
Growing, okay. So what does Facebook need to do in order to fight back?
I wouldn't put it in those terms. I think there's always a sense of one network getting a share against the others, and in a way it's true. Our marketing budgets are somewhat fixed, but Facebook is doing fantastically well too. Just that Google has been growing, and maybe it's eating share from other networks and not Facebook. But unfortunately, I can't share details on where what.
It's worth trying.
I'd say too that we're all up here really ROI driven, so obviously the network that delivers the best ROI is going to be the one that gets the majority of our business, but having visibility into how we're spending, who we're looking to acquire, really helps us optimize that ROI and know kind of what to expect longer term from those players.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. While we're on the subject of media channels, we're all familiar with the usual Facebook, Google, AppLovin, Chartboost, and a lot of the big players who are providing really good quality and consistent delivery over the past years. However, we're always looking for the next big thing. We're always looking for a platform which is going to offer what everybody's looking for, really, that user acquisition delivery, reasonable pricing, good ROI. What do you guys think is the next big opportunity in the space in terms of media channels? And I'll let Carey answer that first.
Sure. So I don't think any new channel is going to be a panacea. Especially what we see in a lot of these newer channels are they're smaller. They don't have scale to compete with necessarily a Facebook or Google, but they can deliver a very high quality of niche user. So we see playables being something that's very engaging. It has great conversion, but again, it's a much smaller opportunity especially if you're looking to scale to acquire a large number of players or have big spend like we do.
Okay. Any other opinions here?
I would just add that I agree with Carey, but I think there's a few sources that might be of interest to folks. Like Pinterest is a big one, right? They've been doing a lot of branded inventory, like Levi's and American Eagle, but I think they will be offering more solutions to folks like us as well.
And Pinterest is pre-install and push notifications across a variety of devices, in case you're not familiar. Also, I don't know, Instagram is one that sort of emerged over the last couple months and was highlighted in Elier's social casino tracker this morning. And that's one that people have been seeing some good success with as well.
Yeah, I can echo that from our side. We definitely saw Instagram becoming a much more reliable platform, especially if you nail the creative side of things. I think that's really the key. The Instagram channel in general is a different mindset for the user, and often the creative itself doesn't need to look like an ad. It needs to look like something engaging and something artful that's going to attract the eye on Instagram. And I definitely agree about Pinterest. In theory, what they have on paper is a lot of engaged 30-plus females in the US, exactly the kind of audience that we're looking for. So it'll be interesting to see how that thing emerges. Next subject I want to talk about is UA teams. Building your own UA team internally and the challenges that are associated with it. Obviously, there's various different ways to approach UA strategy. You can work with companies like DAU-UP. You can build your own teams internally, or a combination of the both. But I'd like to hear from you guys, what are some of the challenges that you face in building that UA team internally? And I'll give that to Nick first of all to start.
Excuse me. Interesting timing. We're a smaller company than most of these others up here. So in our evolution, we grew our engineering and product teams, and then our QA and CS teams, and now we are really building out our UA team. Up until 8 months ago, we were 3 people. Now we're 12, 13, somewhere around there. So I think it's really worthwhile to invest in building a UA team. How to do that is a different question entirely. We've found that it's really important to have specialists. It confuses me a little bit when companies have people who are buying on both networks and on Facebook. Facebook requires so much oversight. It offers so much data that it really warrants having people specialized and focused on that. So we separate our UA social from UA networks. And that's been able to help us find true experts. I would say right now we're interviewing 1 of every 10 people we make a phone call with, and hiring 1 of every 5 people we interview. So it's competitive, and there are talented people out there, but finding the right fit for your product, your company, and your UA philosophies is difficult. I'd say another thing that we've invested in and found to be a major lever is the ad creative team. If you're spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars every month in UA, you're getting lots and lots of impressions. And the social casino audience is finite. It's not a huge audience at all. So if you're just serving the same ads over and over and over, you burn out really quickly. So we've put a lot of emphasis on our ad creative team. Not just doing the creative, but also being able to do some of the analysis on their own about what's working, drawing hypotheses on what might be working, and then building out from there. So I think it's really, really important, just to sum up, to have UA social, UA networks separate, and then really, really try to keep the institutional knowledge of having the design team in-house.
Cool. I want to come back to the point about creative in a little while, but first of all, Mark, I'd like to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah, sure. So I'm formerly from Product Madness, so I guess I'll be talking about the team that we built in Product Madness itself. We have the same split in terms of ownership, so Facebook, Google, ad networks, And then, just like Nick, we also have a dedicated art resources plus some data science, data analytics people to kind of build out the BI tool. I think most people, if I start with recruiting, it is very difficult to find good quality, talented people with experience. So if you can find them, then that's great. You should try to hold on to them. And if we move to creative, if you're assuming that you're doing everything from a targeting perspective at 100%, creative is the one thing you have to become different to everybody else. So investing in that is very, very important. And it's a very difficult question to answer, actually. Is how much is the right creative? It's quite challenging, because a good ad can be worth a lot to a company, but more doesn't necessarily mean better. So I think we're going to touch on it later.
So Nick, you mentioned that from your perspective that actually the creative people are also responsible for the analysis and the execution and coming back with the good ideas. To what extent is the UA person also responsible for leading the brief and for defining the creative strategy?
I would say very important. It's easy to look at data retroactively or retrospectively and have someone who created the ad say, okay, I think that's what worked. But the actual campaign managers are seeing it happen live. So it does come from the campaign managers more frequently than it does from the graphic designers. But I really think it's important for both things to go in both directions. We believe in a very flat team where all the information is available to everybody. I just think it's a better way to capture institutional knowledge.
Okay, and can creative be something that's executed programmatically or automatically based on data?
In a perfect world, yes. For a company our size, no. But it's semi-programmatic. Like there's manual process, but if we had more resources, we could probably make a fully automated process.
Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think look, you need to look at what's performing and then optimize to that. So I think what we're talking about is specific tags in ads or automatically reading. We haven't gone down that path. We do spend a lot of time analyzing. Well, they spend a lot of time analyzing specific images and kind of why we think they performed better or worse. There is a slight risk here as well, is losing the forest for the trees. You want to make sure that you're able to also innovate in terms of completely different ideas, not just this is working, this is working, this is working kind of thing. So we also obviously look at what competition's doing, both in social casino and outside in regular gaming.
Okay, fantastic. Still on the subject of creative, but broadening it a little bit to ad units. Carey, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about ad units that you see as particularly innovative across all formats, across all channels these days. Is there anything that's particularly standing out to you as effective?
We talked a little bit about playables earlier, but that's one that I think is really sort of emerging and a very important one, especially as it finds scale. It is something that helps sort of onboard a user so they get a sense of what your game is actually like, what the UI is, a chance to sort of experiment a safe space, and then convert to your game. I always get a Game of War playable whenever I play the New York Times crossword puzzle. I'm guessing because they sniff my device and they know that I have a bunch of other mid-core titles on there. Maybe the New York Times crossword puzzle is the right demographic for Game of War. I'm not quite sure, but it is something where I can see and get a sense, if I'm not familiar with the game, of like how to start building and really feel comfortable with the mechanic before I go and download something that might be new or different.
If I could just add one more thing outside of that, this is probably old news, but video is also huge these days.
Really?
So you see it everywhere, and video is also difficult. Like you can create GIFs and statics easily, on Photoshop, but video is like much more challenging, especially when you need so many videos for Facebook. So having the right team that delivers a lot of video creatives is extremely important.
I would just add on video, because I agree it's difficult and really important. Our team is starting to break everything into modules, so you can create entirely new videos that are just permutations of different modules. We found that to be really effective. You get a lot more out there, and I agree that, I don't know, you that said more does not necessarily mean better? Yeah, more doesn't mean better, but more can mean you're learning quicker. So.
I'll give it one more try to get some numbers from you guys, but how much is video parts of your creative overall?
3/4.
Yeah, I'd say over 50%.
Fantastic. Okay. Great. Nick, I think I saw you on a panel a few years ago and you were asked the question about which casino apps are actually innovating in the space and doing something a little bit different. You probably don't remember, but I do. From DAU-UP's perspective, we see a lot of casino apps coming and going. Generally speaking, once we hear a company come to us and say it's like a slot machine but with a twist, there's a 9 out of 10 chance that it's not going to work. However, there's been a few companies over the years who've actually succeeded to change the model a little bit, change the mechanics, and do something a little bit different. Play Studios, for example. Pharaoh's Way was a great example too. So I'm wondering if you can comment a bit about games that you see have changed the genre slightly, but successfully.
All right, so 5 years ago, it was just a bunch of bad slots apps out there, right? Even the best ones were not that great compared to what's out now. You saw a lot of people try and innovate. You heard people saying, oh, RPGs make money, slots make money, let's just merge them together, we'll make twice the money. That obviously did not happen. But it has started to kind of break into different silos. You have your video slots specialists. I would say that IGT Double Down is one of the better examples of that. You have your more casual, so Slotomania is kind of a more casual games kind of burn. You have social. Big Fish is by far and away the leader, and they've nailed social more than anybody. You see classic slots, mechanical slots out there. That happened really about a year ago, year and a half ago maybe. Some companies started coming out with what looked to the untrained eye to be really ugly looking slots games, but incredibly effective in terms of revenue. Narrative, you mentioned Pharaoh's Way, and then Narrative Plus, so really the success of that RPG plus slots would be scatter slots. I think Merck has done an incredible job of not just fleshing out new spenders, but retaining them into perpetuity, which is really the hardest part of what we do. I think everyone would agree. So Merck and Scatter have done a really good job at that. In terms of where innovation is going, I don't know what's next. I haven't seen anything as innovative as Scatter, at least in a while. But I feel like someone's going to crack it. A lot of the innovation is happening now actually on the UA side. So I think this is kind of a good panel to talk about that, where the product might not reflect it, but the strategies in UA are innovative. And I think every company up here, including Product Madness, have done some pretty innovative things.
Can you go into more detail about what the innovative things are?
I don't know how much I want to. All right, so I'm actually going to be talking about this at Casual Connect in Tel Aviv, so I'll share a little teaser. We've seen people start to view the entry point as the app store. So casino companies would have video poker slots, blackjack, whatever, in one integrated casino app. So the user would come in to the app, and then they would go into the lobby, then they would select which game they wanted to play. We chose to go a different route with disintegrated casino. So going on the assumption that if someone wanted to play bingo, they're searching for the word bingo, not for the word casino. So break it out into a separate app because they'll find you that way. As in our company's evolution, we've gone more away from organic and unpaid UA into paid UA, where the bulk of our quality installs at least are coming from paid channels. We really view the entry point to be the ad. So our strategy is a little different out there, and I do think that this is pretty innovative, is just get as much content as you can get out there. There are machines that people aren't going to be attracted to, whether it's the themes or the math. But if you get more of them out there, you'll find the ones that will. And you can get more people, maybe not into a single app, but into your company's network. And that's really helped us grow. And we're a pretty underfunded or unfunded company competing with largely publicly traded players. So if we can just get more and more people into our network at lower prices and saturate much slower, which does happen in a finite audience, it's been really impactful for us and allowed us to triple every year of our 5 years of existence.
I'll definitely be attending in Tel Aviv for this panel. That was a great teaser.
You live there, don't you?
I do live there, and I can't wait. Guys, do you guys have any examples of other apps that you see that are kind of breaking the mold a little bit beyond what Nick mentioned?
Just quickly on kind of multi-app versus single
Sure.
app strategy. It's quite an interesting debate.
Definitely.
I think. Product Madness before they launched Heart of Vegas was multi-app, similar, new app. It is easy to get unfocused when you have a really winning application. So there has to be that balance between launching new products, making sure that you have a product for each segment of the market, and losing focus on, hey, this is actually a really successful product. If we spend time and energy growing and optimizing it, it will improve. So I think what we'll see is more and more people launching more and more applications over the next 12 months.
I do see the counter side of that argument. And I think one of the ways to battle that lack of focus is through your technology. So if your tech can run multiple SKUs off of one engine, you can have multiple SKUs without losing focus on the product.
I think you guys have done a great job of keeping focus as you've seen good metrics and being able to grow the games that are really performing for you. You talked a little bit about having the ad be the entry point. How are you integrating the ad units into this sort of multi-portfolio strategy, or the multi-app strategy that you have?
Are you talking like with deep links?
Well, just in general. So if the innovative part of UA right now is not thinking about the app as the entry point, but the ad as the entry point, how do you, maybe just explain a little bit more for the people here how that sort of folds into your multi-app strategy?
Without saying too much, we almost don't care. Like if a user comes in via an ad for a theme that is in one game, we're at least making an educated guess that that is the economy, that is the style of game that they're going to respond best to. And we don't have the most sophisticated cross promo, but even with relatively unsophisticated cross promo, you can get a sense of whether or not the user is actually responding to that SKU, and if they aren't, bounce them out to another SKU that you think that they would like more. Just to go back to my question, to Carey's question, I think deep links are important. If someone comes in on a wolf-themed app or wolf-themed machine or a Cleopatra-themed machine, land them on the machine that they came in on. Don't land them in a lobby where they have to scroll 50 times before they get to that machine. We did that for about a month and it did not work, but when we actually deep linked them in properly, it did.
I think the other thing, I think the original question was innovation in the casino space. Poker and bingo, you did a great job of summarizing the different segments of the market, are ones that we haven't seen a huge amount of innovation in yet. So, it's really dominated by kind of two parties. So I think it's Bingo Drive entered the top 50 on Canvas for the first time. It hasn't got a mobile product, and it's kind of a newish product. But those are the segments as well, I think, haven't really had much innovation. I think inside of the segments we've talked about, there's been some innovation in what we would describe as the metagame features, or kind of marketing promotions and events inside of that are really quite unique to individual games. But it's definitely slowing. I think the Stepper was really the largest, and then the Scatter Slots guys obviously were the largest kind of leap forwards in innovation.
So those innovative games, are they succeeding to grow the market, or are they just appealing to the same audience at the end of the day?
I think the Scatter Slots guys, it's a new audience. I think some of the other ones, the Stepper or the mechanical reels segment was also a different segment of the market. So I think it depends. If it's even social, for some parties, a different segment of the market. So I think it depends on the type of innovation.
Okay, great. Okay, next topic. The topic of our talk today is CPI, less than LTV. Now what? Well, the first thing to do is try and acquire users from different sources using innovative means at a more cost-effective way. And definitely one of the trends that we see emerging lately is influencer marketing, whether that's via YouTube channels or Twitter or any other number of channels, which of course comes with certain challenges as well, like tracking and attribution and the rest of it. Aayush, we'd love to hear your thoughts about how you're using influencer marketing and how it's working for you.
Sure. Without going into specifics too much, I think broadly what we're seeing is I've not seen too many influencer campaigns on social casino work so well. I'd say I think it has worked perhaps better for mid-core games. I mean, you see a lot of YouTube influencers, talking about how to play Game of War or War Dragon and so on. Also for casual games, sometimes if you have a really big influencer post on Twitter or Instagram, it might work. I think the challenge for influencers is not so much like the scaling aspect of it, because now the market has started to broaden a little bit, and there's definitely some aggregators that you can work with that will draw up a list and give it to you. So that part is addressed, but I think the challenge is really in the funnel, because it's, say for example on Instagram, an influencer has to say, oh, go to the About Me page and click the link to download the app. Or YouTube, it's like, go to the description and click the link and download the app. So I think that's the part that needs to be fixed, and possibly, I'm sure both Instagram and YouTube care deeply about these really large influencers, and hopefully, they will fix that and it'll probably work better for everyone.
Okay. Does anyone else have experience with this area?
Having a breadth of titles, including mid-core, we definitely, use influencer networks. See them work for mid-core, but we also do see some success with them on social casino as well. So it's a strategy that we continue to pursue.
Okay. Is it possible to explain what the correct strategy is to get it to work on social casino?
Well, I think really, like some of the news recently, you want to make sure that your disclaimers are very clear, and that you're being very transparent with players around the fact that this is a sort of a paid endorsement. So that's a big key of it. And then it's really, it's not going to be a volume play, but there are sort of niches of the market that can be valuable.
Okay.
In that.
And for those who haven't gone into this area yet, where do you start? How do you find the influencers? What's the best tool or the best outlet?
I guess the easiest way is just to reach out to a few of the influencers. It's not very difficult, and just do it directly. Try a few of those, see where it ends up.
Okay, great. Anyone else? All right, next topic. I think this is super relevant to the subject of the panel. How do we actually implement the right methodology for retention? Of course, CPIs are getting larger and more impact is attributed to re-engagement as time goes on. Mark, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you see things.
Sure. So maybe I'll split it into two separate areas. One, retention marketing program to increase your lifetime value. And then the second would be kind of re-engagement advertising to then, once that user is churned, to try to bring them back in. So we obviously spend a tremendous amount of, they obviously spend a tremendous amount of time and effort with lifecycle and segmenting marketing. So, delivering the right user, the right message at the right time. So once a user comes in, and if it's the daily bonus or a marketing event or a new slot or whatever it is, making sure that that message is delivered to the user in the appropriate way. So that's the second thing. There is some point in time where you will not be able to buy any more users for that individual app, and that's where your mind shift needs to switch to, okay, I've acquired a large portion of the audience, which ones have churned, and can I get them back into this game or another game? Measuring that and actually getting the results is quite challenging, and I think we're still learning as we go in terms of re-engagement advertising.
Okay. Does anyone else want to share their experience? No. Okay.
Well, I would add, I think it's important that you do have a very clear idea of how you're retaining across the player lifecycle within your game, and that's very well sort of thought out from the beginning, because it is expensive to acquire a user and you want to keep them there for a long time. So we're lucky we see the social part of Big Fish Casino be a very sticky and engaging mechanic for our players, and that's, the number of friends is the highest predictor in our game of people who retain and monetize. But having everything from a push notification strategy early on in the game to being able to reach out via multiple channels, including email, it's really important to keep them with the game as long as possible, because even if you don't convert them right away, you have a chance to increase your conversion later or re-engage them over one.
Great.
Just as Nick as well talked about the deep link from the ad into the game, it's just as important for re-engagement that all your channels are synced up, and that the experience that they click on is then the experience they get in game.
I would also add that this is going to sound pretty simplistic, but the retention of a player versus retention of a spender are two different things. Obviously, retaining a spender is more valuable. And re-engaging or retargeting a spender is also probably worth additional spend, whereas you probably don't want to spend much on a reinstall of someone who played for 60 days and never spent money. And I've seen a lot of people just make the mistake of lumping the two together. My retention is X. Very often they're really different numbers. Retention of a spender usually is and should be a lot longer than just a regular player.
Okay. Are there any other common sins that companies are doing in measuring re-engagement or in measuring these kind of metrics?
I think lumping payers and non-payers together is a pretty big mistake, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also always important to just keep focused on the overall metric. So how much did I acquire this user for in the beginning, and then how much did I pay to reacquire them, and making sure that at the end of the day you're still going to profit and be able to grow your business.
Okay. Okay, the next topic I want to talk about is ASO, definitely an emerging subject. A lot of companies have been springing up offering ASO services, whether it's keyword optimization or whether it's A/B testing, different permutations of landing pages. Nick, maybe you can tell us a bit about how much focus you put into ASO, how important it is.
Historically, a ton, largely because we weren't very well funded to start, at least. We needed as many free installs as we could. Kind of like lumping payers and non-payers together being a sin. Just lumping discovery versus search is a sin as well. There's a huge difference between someone who came into your app because they searched for slots or bingo versus someone who just saw it at the top of the charts. And you'll see a lot of people move away from charting strategies and towards ASO strategies for that reason. I'll just share a little anecdote. We're the number 1 or number 2 search result for the term bingo in the Android store, the Google Play store. So we've always gotten a ton of organic installs. About 6 months ago, we ran a test. We tested about 7 or so icons, and we're now doing this in every single one of our apps. And we changed the icon, and we more than doubled the amount of free traffic we got every day. And when that's already at thousands of installs and you double it, it makes a massive difference. We grew our user base, grew our revenue without spending a penny. And that's a pretty extreme success story, but all the little 5% bumps really add up as well.
I think Google provides a great tool set to be able to A/B test your store pages too. So if you're not doing that, I think it's a really important thing to continue to do. And creative is a really big, can have a really big impact, but even smaller description changes and other more metadata focused changes can also have a big impact. I think it's just also, you need to be careful that what works on Google doesn't always automatically translate well to what works on iOS. So having a strategy for how to test and optimize iOS separately is also important.
Great. So on the stage here we have companies who variously use branded content IP or proprietary IP. There's advantages and disadvantages to both. I'd like to start with you, Aayush, and talk a little bit about what is behind using branded IP and how it helps you.
Sure. I guess the app stores are so crowded, right? I mean, there's so many slots games, so many bingo games. How do you stand out? I don't think there's any question that IP can help you if executed correctly. It's difficult to put a number behind it. Everyone knows it's like 20%, it's 30%. I don't know. There's no counterfactual. You don't submit the same game twice without the IP generally. But if done well, using IP can work very well for most companies. Zynga is a great example with Wizard of Oz, with Hit It Rich, and so on. GSN Games, I believe, used IP very well as well, and I think it continues to work for most folks.
Mark?
It's actually the land-based casino side. So I was originally with the parent company of the digital company. It's very much hit or miss. So the volatility in your performance, if you put out a game that's branded and it works, it can be really super successful. A Wheel of Fortune in the land-based world is phenomenally successful and continues to be really exciting. Now, you may compare that to Greece, which in the land-based world didn't do that well, and in Black Diamond Casino, I'm unsure of how it did. So it's very much dependent on the brand that you get and then how you execute on that brand. I think it's tough to think just taking an average slot machine and putting a brand on it is going to somehow revitalize that game. It needs to be a good match.
And again, is the idea to try and appeal to an audience that you can't otherwise get, or is it to basically bump your metrics with your existing core demographic?
I think it's both. So, can you please your existing users by giving them branded content, and can you attract new users, maybe lower CPIs because they recognize the brand? So, in Heart of Vegas, we have The Walking Dead, which was, a launch that we had, and, we saw an impact on both user acquisition and retention.
Okay. Does anyone want to comment on why proprietary is the way to go?
Well, I think if you have a great game, you can build a brand around that game, and it doesn't have to be one that you've paid for. So that's obviously Big Fish Casino. We don't have any external IP, but we've created some games that our users are really loyal to within the app. Slotomania also has a very low usage of any external IP, and has been able to create just a great app based on the metagame features and the gameplay and the slots that they produce.
Okay.
I think as well with brands, we're seeing a lot of people kind of rip off some of this IP, so both like proprietary IP as well as kind of Wheel of Fortune. So if you look at most people's ads, they'll have a Wheel of Fortune inspired wheel, and that's kind of not okay. So I think some of the ad partners need to step in here and actually say, look, you can't, we need to protect this IP.
Okay, great. Aayush, just want to ask a question. How do you think the audience is actually changing over the years in social casino?
I guess the audience is generally, I would say, the same. It's still female 30 plus. There are pockets of like male 30 plus audience as well that works.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that's changing is just the ability to look for and acquire whales.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are just really focused on that and working towards that. I think that's the real challenge. Like, how do we continue to acquire just whales?
Okay. Nick, do you have any thoughts?
I think it is a Wales-based environment. I don't have much to add to that. You can pay $30 for somebody who looks good in the first 5 days, but they only spend twice at $1.99 a pop, and that is obviously not a good install. It is a matter of sussing out who the whales are and identifying them as quickly as possible, so you can then create audiences or lookalikes and go target more people to look like that.
Great. Okay, so before we get on to questions, I just want to stop and talk about the future a little bit and speculate a little bit about how the trends that we're seeing in general could integrate with social casino. Of course, there's a lot of hype about how chatbots are going to enhance the customer experience, augmented reality, virtual reality. When are we going to start seeing hordes of people in Central Park fighting to play a slot machine on the other side, or running into train tracks to spin the wheel? Carey, do you want to take that?
I hope we don't see people running into train tracks. Coming from a game that has always had a very core social focus, I think that having that social connectivity is great, but at the end of the day, people want a very engaging and immersive game around it. So I think that we'll see more social coming into games, but I don't know that we'll necessarily see very engaging games go into just a messaging app. I think it's going to be a good crossover between the both. For virtual reality, that's something that we have a team in Oakland focused on. That's very exciting. But we're really looking at it, across the portfolio of content that we have. And it's not something that I necessarily see strong for social casino very early on. I think it'll be very exciting to see how the market and the business models develop, and what genre and type of player we see kind of emerging from it. But it's still such a very clunky sort of system that's a kind of attracting I would say not a core social casino player at this point, in my experience.
Any thoughts?
I'm actually really curious about chatbots before install, actually. I think there's a lot of kind of cliche ways about how you might be able to use it as a feature within the app. Pretty skeptical about how that would work. But I do think you could significantly increase your conversion rates if after click somebody was actually brought into a chatbot experience. Maybe given information about a promo, maybe given additional information about the app, whatever it might be. I'm not sure. I would love it if somebody would crack that.
What about esports? Is there a place for social slots in esports, or even poker, perhaps?
No.
Okay.
I think tournaments is the kind of competitive version of what we're talking about here.
Yes.
Now, would you gamble on other people gambling? I'm unsure.
We don't use that word, gambling. Okay, guys. Any questions from the crowd?
Hi, Eric
That's
from
fine.
Fixu. So last session, Facebook had mentioned that you can now optimize on payers, retention time, and session time. Google was mentioned here as a rapidly improving channel. And it's probably not a stretch to attribute that to the fact that they can see all app installs on Android and can see in-app actions as well. So how do you balance tapping into these extremely valuable sets of data while also working to protect your whales?
This is a very controversial question in the industry, right? If you share your data to ad networks, whether they be Google or Facebook, you're essentially giving them information that could potentially be used for other competitors, right? Like Big Fish and others. So I think it's something that each studio has to balance. Like, you know, that sure, I might get tremendous value and scale from doing this, but it is plausible that it might be used against me. It's something that you're just going to have to hedge on.
I think one more, having the best possible product helps you mitigate that risk, because a lot of these people are going to see casino ads through Facebook and Google. So whom you share with just has to be dealt with on their reputation specifically.
I would say, yeah, it's thinking that you operate within a walled garden if you don't work with these networks is probably not really realistic. Your players, and we see that, you know, social casino players play 2, 3 or more other social casino games anyway. Some of those probably have ads that are showing them other social casino games. They're seeing them on their Facebook feed, wherever they go. So they're already exposed to the availability of content out there. So it's really just understanding, am I getting some value for that? And is it helping me do something that I couldn't do without sharing it?
Calling out another one of Owen's points before, it talked about a lot of automation and doing it in-house versus partnering. And I'm interested in getting your points on, you know, how much investing you're doing in in-house system, how much you're partnering out, and where do you see the biggest opportunity for investing in automation? And maybe not with Mark, because I'm product manager as well, so I know where that is going for us at least.
Not everyone else.
Me?
Well, it'll benefit everyone else.
Yeah.
What are you doing to me, Francesca? I think you got to invest in the areas where, at some point, individual shouldn't be analysing that data or that section of the game. So if that's the user acquisition data coming in and having a smarter way to digest that data, then that's great. If it's email, then that's great. It's really unique depending on the platform and the channel. For us, we spent a lot of time with user acquisition data because it's so important and it's so much money that you really want to make sure that you have a good way of identifying good and bad sources of traffic quickly.
I can answer that as well. I think at DAU-UP, very similar to what Mark said, what we try to do with our technology, by the way, we're an FMP with the ad tech specialty. We try to basically have the technology do the job that the person can do, but it's too time consuming and there's too much data to wade through as well. So in that sense, automation is the solution to efficiency from our perspective.
Maybe just one more. For user acquisition, we talked about the data, the sources coming in. For creative, we started thinking about, okay, let's tag them with, wheel or call to action or the artist that did it, and it's just started leading to kind of nowhere. We're collecting this data, and there was a lot of resources to tag it, but it wasn't so important. So I think knowing where it's suitable and where it's not is important. I'd love to hear what Nick and the rest of the team had to say.
We're not good at automation. I'll start by saying that. I think it is a resources issue. We know what we would do if we had more resources that we could dedicate towards it, and we're getting there. But we've always found whenever we automate something, things do get lost. UA is very much a science, but it's not a pure science. There is some art and some feel to it, and I think if you have somebody running campaigns that has good instincts, you can save a lot of money. Just capping at we won't make a decision before $25,000 spent can be very foolish. Sometimes you need the full 25, 50, 100 grand, whatever, to know whether or not a campaign is working, but sometimes you can know a lot quicker, especially if you have somebody with good instincts working over it.
Hey there. So on the topic of automation and measuring, and you've got CPI and LTV and the panel discussion, I mean, there's so many metrics, even if you just took the top line, like your top 5 or 10 indicators of success. How do you guys go about reconciling or try to make any sense beyond someone that just has good instincts of, how do you start to measure this campaign's working, this campaign's not working, that creative's working, that creative's not working? Has anybody been able to collapse that to a simpler set of metrics?
At the end of the day, it really comes back to return on ad spend. So how quickly are we going to get our money back? And that's the equation up there. We've built predictive models so we can tell within the first couple days to a week what the monthly recoup is. So that can give us a really clear indication on campaigns. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're backing up those early indications with actually looking back and making sure that everything's tracking to where you predicted it, because things do change in the industry or within the app over time that can improve or have an impact on your earlier predictions. But overall, really data focused, and at the end of the day, it's are we going to make our money back and be able to make some profit from the user that we can then reinvest in the game and the team and in more UA.
Hi, just talking about UA teams and building them out again. So it kind of sounds like we have the data science nerds who look at all of the data and kind of get a feel for it, and like you said, instincts. And then you have the creative graphic team. Do you guys generally have someone who melds that together? I've heard the term campaign manager. What kind of skill set do they typically have? Can they speak data and art? How do they come up with content? What's that process like?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Between our UA team and our creative team, we have both a creative director and a project manager. The creative director speaks art plus some data. The project manager speaks data plus some art, and just the two of them together really do act as that melding force. I think it's really important. Yeah.
It's almost exactly the same for us as well. And I think it is important that you're looking at the data around creative, but you're also really taking time to step back and visualize what's working or not, and not just sort of taking such an analytical approach that you can lose some of the inspiration on how to think about this in a new context, that sort of thing.
I have a question. Jeff Hyman, the guy who was supposed to be the original MC that I filled in for today, when he and I were first getting into the business together, he drove home LTV greater than CPI, LTV greater. And at that time, a few years ago, CPIs seemed ridiculous, and that was years ago, and they just seemed to be going up and up. And now that I look at the crossover of real money gaming, where I see the cost of a user in real money gaming being in the hundreds of dollars, where do you guys see CPI going?
I'm going to answer that in two ways. One, Carey touched on it a minute ago, but you can bid as much as you need to bid as long as you get that early indication that there's going to be a return on your ad spend. Some of the installs we get on a daily basis cost us $2, $3. Others cost us $20, $30. And it's all based on that quick, early, yeah, we're going to get the money back on this person. will bid accordingly. Another interesting way to answer that question is growing an audience in the UK, where real money gambling is an option for the consumer. It impacts us for sure. Like our CPIs are higher, return on ad spend is a little slower in the UK, but I think everybody up here has built a meaningful audience in the UK when the consumer has the option to play for real money. They're not one and the same. 5-6 years ago when this industry was getting started, everyone said you're gonna get crushed when real money gambling is legalized, and I think that's been proven just completely incorrect. It's a different experience. Sometimes people want to play for real money, and it could be the same person that sometimes wants to play social.
Part of the CPI increase has come from competition, and part of it's come from our ability to monetize users better. The other part is what we talked about before, which is data sharing and targeting. So your cost per whale may be stable, may be increasing, but as targeting gets better, your quality of user should also get better, and therefore your CPI. So just a raw CPI number is not really that fair to look at in isolation.
You know, obviously people say that if you have a good brand or a good license, you're going to get a lot more organics off it, and it's going to lower your CPI. But then obviously you've got the cost of of that license. So how does those licenses really affect kind of the CPI?
I think a good example, probably a relevant example, is Pokemon. The game was released 3 years ago without the IP, and now it's launched and it's much more successful, obviously. So there's certain IP that is going to just change the game. In fact, you're just in a different. The CPI is an irrelevant metric. It's kind of it's more specific on the whole game. Just putting out IP, as I touched on before, unless it has a dramatic impact on your CPI, and usually it's if the target market knows that brand, then it's probably going to have a limited difference. I'd say the Wheel of Fortune brand is such a very well-known brand in the casino, it's almost synonymous with GSM.
All right, well, if there's no additional questions, I'd like to thank David and the panel. Great discussion.